The challenge is the industry and how we attract people to the paper making manufacturing. So it's the work on the employer branding that we've got in the background in terms of getting more people to know who we are.
Hi there, it's Emma Newbury from Pioneer Selection, one of the directors here. Today I'm going to have the pleasure of meeting with Tracey from the HR team at Northwood.
Something new that we introduced in 2024 was to have a 2-week-long induction program across the business, and myself and the other HR business partner designed that, led that.
Today's conversation is all really about understanding the decision behind Northwood launching their own apprenticeship scheme, which has been an absolute success.
We guarantee our apprentices a job at the end of it. So we give them an apprenticeship agreement that's for the 3 or 4 years, and then we give them a contract and guarantee them that if they pass their qualification and they perform, then there's a job at the end of it. Because why would we want to waste their time and our time and have nothing to give them?
So really appreciate you taking the time out to come and meet with me today, especially when you just got back from holiday. So I appreciate that, Tracey. As I said, today's really just about us getting a little bit more of an insight into your role at Northwood, and I suppose how Northwood have really engaged apprenticeship schemes, and I suppose the learning that you've taken, because as I mentioned to you previously, I think Northwood have a really good story to tell about their journey with apprenticeship. And I think there's quite a lot of SME manufacturing organisations that have seen the opportunity but don't quite know how to go about launching or considering sort of taking the step forward. So I appreciate you taking the time today to have a chat with me about that. So Before I get into that, do you want to just tell me a bit about your role within Northwood, what your sort of key priorities and responsibilities are?
Yeah, so I'm one of the HR business partners for Northwood, and I look after what we call the 3 tissue mills. So we make the paring reels, and then they're sent to the converting sites to be made into the final product. So I'm, as I say, responsible for 3 sites. All the sites are different, but they all have apprentices. So I do everything to do with HR or people management, supporting managers to support people. So it's quite a varied generalist role.
Yeah. Pulled in every direction, I can imagine.
Yeah.
How much of your time would you say is focused on the apprenticeship in your sort of average week?
So the first task I had when I started in April, the end of April 23, was we need apprentices for specifically for paper making at the time. So we've got paper making apprentices and engineering. But my main focus for the first couple of months was to try to pick up the baton to get us some apprentices into the business. So I am quite passionate about doing this. And I also then have continued to support with it because it's really important to have a good structure. So I can bring that to the managers, or, because it's new in some parts of the business, I've kind of taken it upon myself to make sure it flows, and there's a continuous eye, I shall say, on the apprentices, getting them in. Once they're in, what do we do with them? So in terms of percentage, I would dread to split my job up into percentages, but it's a focus.
Yeah. Okay. Well, was it something that you'd had the experience with previously, or was it just something that you had that interest in, or something that was just, we need to do this, so can you be the person to spearhead it?
It was a new. So we're linked with the chartered paper industry. It was there's several businesses in that. So the paper making one is a big driver to get specific paper maker apprentices in. I'm trying to think. I'm sure I have had experience of graduates and apprentices before, but not recent. But
not
I think when it's something new, or I understand the need, because it's also an industry where we can't just. If we went to just general manufacturing and we could pull people, but we need niche. We've got niche requirements in engineering and specific paper making. So I see the value in what I call growing our own. And the importance of having apprentices in to develop them, because they're your leaders or your engineers of the future, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, because I think in the engineering market in general, we all know there is a skill shortage. We know since COVID, obviously, a large amount of engineers didn't return back because of sort of life balance, etc. But I think it's even harder when you've got a really niche type of machinery. The great thing I think about Northwood is that you really want to invest and pass that knowledge on. And, you know, I've spoken to a couple of your guys there, and I think, you know, you've come up through the ranks and they really buy into that as a business. And I think that's a great retention tool that I think is another, you know, factor that businesses obviously struggle with. So I think from speaking to people within your organisation, I think your culture, your ethos, your mindset around investing in people definitely really stands out, which is brilliant.
So, as I said, in 23, the focus was papermaker apprentices, because linked with the other businesses, we've got a particular training provider where all the CPI members send their apprentices. And then obviously, as you just said, I've spent a big chunk of time trying to recruit engineers. And as you know, because we're working together on it, it's not easy. It's a struggle, and we need to look at alternative ways to get the engineering skill into the business. And one way to do that is to attract people who want to start a career in engineering, and then take them on as apprentices. So then this year's focus was both papermaker and engineering, and getting the sites aware and ready to take on people who don't have all of the skills that we need, and see the relevance of investing, because it's a 3 or 4 year program, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, which means they're going to wait 4 years for the actual engineer at the end of it, when we need them now. So
no, definitely. So I think we've touched on a few points there, but I think an interesting place to start is understanding the decision to introduce the apprenticeship. So obviously you were set that task when you first came about. So what was the vision of how the apprenticeship scheme sort of started when you were first sort of put it forward? What was the vision of having this apprenticeship, because it wasn't in place at all before you picked it up?
There were pockets across the business, but in the mills, the tissue mills as we call them, the vision was, as I've said, it's called paper making, and it's a skill and it's a dye. You know,
it's
again, we're trying to. There is a science. There is actually a science behind it, because you're mixing things
the
together
guys
to
tell
make. So the vision was that, and also backtracking, we've probably got an aging workforce. So the people that were attracted to paper making years gone by, it's not had the same appeal, because it's not the environment for everyone. So the strategy behind it was to have paper makers and not just production operatives, so people who understand the art of paper making and the science behind it, and the need for the different types of jobs in the production area. Then obviously engineering then supports the production and has to make sure the machines are maintained and, you know, planned maintenance and then running, so that production can get products out the door. So they kind of go hand in hand. So it was about growing our own talent, protecting ourselves for the future. If we've got an aging workforce, how do we backfill? Do we backfill them, and looking at when people are likely to retire, but also then production having support of skilled engineers and growing them together.
And how would you say the organisations received the concept of apprenticeships? What was the reaction when you first sort of, you know, went out to say this is a vision and a plan that we're putting in place?
So luckily the seed was planted. I say luckily, the seed was planted before I got it, because as I said, my first job was get some paper maker apprentices in and scramble. So I did manage to get some. I only got one actually last year, one paper maker and one engineering. But what I did was then put a procedure and a policy behind. So once they're in, how are we going to manage them? What's the different role? So a manager and a mentor. How are we going to pay them? So we've got a really clear plan and policy I can keep referring back to, and then making sure they've got a development plan, because the worst thing I've seen is when they bring in apprentices, they just leave them there for 3 or 4 years and then go, right, thank you, and then they bring the next one in and it's another 3. But it's like, we want to nurture them from day one, and we want to get value because people are having to invest the time. So I think there was an appetite across the business. I have had to do some cajoling, hand-holding, further meetings to say, right, okay, where's the development plan? No, I still need the development plan. You still need to talk to them about it. And we need, yes, I need 4 years worth of a plan. You know, because it's like, well, I'll deal with that.
I didn't show what's in it.
Yeah, I'll deal with next year. And I'm like, no, because the person who comes and takes it on needs to also own the plan. So the business...
Have you,
in a whole,
sorry, have you found there's been a lot of hand holding throughout the process? Have you found there's a business that it's needed someone to sort of spearhead it? And if you wouldn't have been doing that, you know, how successful do you think it would have been?
This is my take on it.
Yeah.
whether the business was,
yeah,
and whether. See, might be my work ethic as well, or the way I like to work in terms of being involved and not just starting something and then walking away. I want to see it completed and finished. So I have been chasing managers and making sure that the development plans are there. Are you having your one-to-ones? Send me your paperwork. Let me see what you're doing. Involved with the college. You know, we've set up a scheme where they're managed by one person, but they've got a mentor that's someone else, and even learning what the differences are and why that's needed, and going back and talking to the business about that, but then recognising actually we probably need to do some mentor training because not everyone's understood that, or catching up with them and then going, right, no, you should be doing the one-to-one and the mentor should be involved. So yeah, I have handheld or got more involved with we've had a few issues, but we've learned. And it's the review for me. It's going back and going, right, so how does that not happen again? And what do we put in place to make sure it's not going to happen and that we've learned from it?
Yeah, no, definitely. So how many apprentices have you currently got? So you've obviously been doing this since you said April 2023. But as a business, how many have you got roughly across the across the different departments?
Yeah, across the business, we've got production and engineering currently, and we've got 13 to 14 across the whole business. So yeah, I think we had 4 last year, and then we've took on 10 this year. And something new that we introduced in 2024 was to have a week or 2 week long induction program.
Yeah,
across the business. And myself and the other HR business partner designed that, led that. I went to all of the sessions, learned loads about the business myself, but went round with the apprentices and then was able to build up good relationships with the apprentices by doing that. But we got some great feedback from that, as much as a few people. The gripe was the travel time, because our sites are all, sites are not next door to each other. The value of them seeing the whole business and having presentations from people outside of their site or outside of their area. And then the plan with that is that we do a quarterly event. So that cohort of 14 will also get to know each other more by having events together quarterly. So, because I think sometimes we're guilty of, as businesses, of just putting them into the site, only getting them to know that shift or those people, and not understanding the bigger business or letting them out.
Yeah, I think hearing, even speaking to a couple of the guys at your sites, and as I said, I speak to Mike and Scott quite a lot, and, they talk to me about their journey and how, they came from, starting off as an operator, and obviously Scott came from the military. So, I mean, hearing the journeys, I think that's always a great way as well, to get people to buy in, hearing the actual real life stories. And it's something I'm trying to share more with the industry, because I think it's all well and good, you promote friendships or you promote opportunities with businesses, but until you actually hear it from, the horse's mouth and hear from people who work there. And I think, your industry is very niche. And I think as you said, there is an art to, making paper, and it's got the science behind it. And, from my understanding, you have to have a level of technicality and understanding to be able to sort of, take it on board. So it's not just as simple as come in and I've just got to teach you 2 things. It's an ongoing process. Which I think is good, though, because, that gets someone bought into, staying with the organisation, do you feel?
So some of the things we've done to do that is having the clear development plan. So not just what you're doing this month, it's like what you're doing over the next 4 years. I, when I went around on the apprenticeship induction, I very clearly told them it's also their development plan. So that, as apprentices, it's not just the managers. As apprentices, they need to sign up for it. They need to own it. They need to be pushing back to the business going, it says I should be doing this month, and I'm not. So what's happening with that? We guarantee our apprentices a job at the end of it. So we give them an apprenticeship agreement that's for the 3 or 4 years, and then we give them a contract for a permanent role at the same time, and guarantee them that if they pass their qualification and they perform and behave in terms of our plan, then there's a job at the end of it. Because why would we want to waste their time and our time and have nothing to give them? So the sign up for people, yes, we want them to stay. Yes, we want to engage them. Yes, we want them to see that there's progression within the business, and there's jobs to be had. We're not just, for want of a better word, abusing people and saying, oh, we're going to give you an apprenticeship, because we also pay real living wage. Even on apprentices, even for our apprentices. So they've started on £12 an hour from day one, 16, 17, 18, and whatever age they're coming in at.
Yeah, because there is that stigma that apprentices are always paid the lowest paid. They're
£6 an hour
to do the jobs that nobody else wants to do, and they do feel undervalued. And it is quite a big thing in the manufacturing sector that actually there are some businesses out there that do invest all this time in these apprenticeships. But what's really great to hear is how Northwood have sort of taken that development plan, but also committed to the apprentices after. Because as I said, a lot of, I think, companies are really missing that opportunity. And, we have apprentices who come to us and they say, I really like the company, but I just feel so undervalued, and I'm viewed, I can't break the mold of being known as the apprentice. How do I get out of that? So it's really, really great to hear how Northwood have really sort of, learned that. How did you take that learning on board? Was that because you got feedback, or was that because initially when you set the programme up, apprentices were leaving, or was it just an idea? What made you sort of put that in play?
So the HR director's been heavily involved with this, and also leading on that we should. So we're a real living wage employer anyway. We did that last year. So everyone's on at least the £12 an hour or whatever it's going up to. And we just, when we put the apprenticeship procedure together, I was talking about, we discussed what salary they should go on. And it was like, well, if our minimum is, it was £10.90 at the time, but if our minimum is that, then that's what they go on.
Yeah.
Because why would we give them anything less than if we're saying that we're a real living wage employer across the piece? Again, the contract piece is a commitment to the. We will have jobs at the end of it, because as we talk all the time, engineers. We would be silly to train people for 4 years and they go, oh, there's nothing here for you, when we know actually, again, there's a high demand and short supply. Yeah. If we train them to what we need them to do, then they're already halfway there. Then, 99% there than taking someone from the outside in 4 years' time that doesn't know the machines.
Of course.
And I suppose it's a passion of the business, and especially the HR. We want to value people. We want them to feel wanted and needed. And, I've had that experience myself where you've worked somewhere and saying, they just don't see me, or I'm doing all the rubbish jobs or whatever else. And our paper maker apprentices, I believe, will be much more multi-skilled than the operative, because we're going to move them around, whereas the operatives at the minute will have a particular job. So that's something we need to look at as a business, to multi-skill our operative, but they'll have like a winder job or a dean job, whereas the apprentice will learn it all.
Yeah, of course.
In 3 years. And then our engineering, again, we've got a few differences across our sites. The converting side are multi-skilled, whereas the mills are mechanical or electrical. But it's not to say that after they finish that specialism, they then don't go and train to be, mechanical and electrical or multi-skilled. It's just what we need right now. But also there is the continuation of development once they've come out of an apprenticeship. Our engineering departments have
so important
development for the engineers, not just the apprentices.
Yeah, no, definitely. So that's sort of, covering off why Northwood, chose the journey of apprenticeship. So in terms of the launch and your involvement, who did you have to sort of collaborate with externally? I know you mentioned about the chartered industry that you're obviously affiliated with. So that was specifically in the industry. But what other sort of educational institutions or industry bodies did you have to sort of get involved in to help you develop the program that you've put in place?
I don't know whether it's a have to or a chose to. So I've got a lady who I used to work with many years ago, and she's in manufacturing in a different business, and she's doing some really good stuff in terms of apprenticeships. They do several layers in their business. So I contacted her and I said, I want to come and watch. So she was presenting to a school to try to attract them to attend.
Oh, amazing.
And so I went and watched this, and I said, let me see what you're doing. So we've got one training provider for our paper maker. So I collude with them all the time. What's the course that they're on? How can you help me attract people? And so they're called Catch, but all the CPI members are using them, and it's a specific training course. They helped me to advertise the papermaker apprentice role. So they'll put on the government website, they'll do the first initial screening, and they have a maths and English test, and then they'll say, these are the ones we think you should interview. So I do that for papermaking, and then for the engineering and papermaking, I've contacted local schools up to my 3 different Lancaster, Disley and Chesterfield, and said, schools and colleges, we have a requirement for over 18 because of the health and safety implications, and we have got a couple that are under, but then they can't work alone. They have to be more closely managed, so it does tie up a person's time. But because of the serious health and safety risk, 18 is preferable. So that's more sixth forms, isn't it, and colleges. So I contacted some local ones and said, we've got an advert, can I put it up there? The one in Chesterfield with the college, I went back and they provided some candidates, went back and gave feedback. So the ones that weren't selected as well as the ones that were. So it's just about building up your network and your links it's trying to improve the employer brand, isn't it? Because not everyone knows who Northwood are.
No. And as I said, my interests, stemmed, obviously I'm in the manufacturing sector, but it was from my 17-year-old, considering what universities, what she wanted to do. And then half of the career's presentation was about apprenticeships and engineering. And again, it just enlightened me to think, hang on a minute, I'm constantly speaking to my clients about the gaps and the skill shortage. Some clients are, way ahead with their apprenticeship schemes. Some are in the, thinking about it, and some haven't even contemplated. So I think it's such an area of learning for the manufacturing sector to sort of, take that on board. What did you find were the sort of main challenges initially with launching the program, and how did you sort of approach overcoming them, or even over the time, what have you found the main challenges?
Making sure that people in the business have time to spend with the apprentice, to develop them, to observe them, to give them feedback, to nurture them. Having that separate role of manager and mentor, because the mentor should be the expert in the subject or the type of work and be heavily involved in their development plan, but then the manager should oversee that what's going on there with the mentor and the person, and that the person is being developed in the right way, and that the college stuff is going right. So it was, I suppose, I had the ops director sponsored this, so it was great. So the ops director and the HR director were very heavily involved. We had meetings across the business to write the procedure, so people understood the apprenticeship procedure. We explained how salaries would be increased. So we have incremental salaries based on their development plan. So it's not just once a year with the rest of the business. But it's managing all of that and making, so I suppose, I handhold a bit in making sure that they're at 6 months, they should be getting an increment where we are. What's the feedback from college? What's this? So another challenge from an engineering point of view, we've not just got one training provider because of where our locations are. And then they're not all doing the same engineering qualification because it's slightly different across Lancaster, Stockport and Chesterfield. So I'm trying to get your head around what? So they're coming out with a what MVQ, and they're coming out with a what, and making sure that they were all relevant for the business at the end. Because you'll know from an engineering point of view, we do like even engineers that come in to have gone through an engineering apprenticeship.
Yeah, of course. Of course. What do you think the colleges could do, I suppose? Is there anything they can do? Is it something that you've sort of raised to them at all? Or is it just they are so separate that it's not even a discussion point?
I haven't raised it because I was too busy with the hiring manager to try and understand the engineering qualification they offered and whether that was wholly relevant to what we needed them to be learning at the aside performing in the job. So I don't. I may be completely wrong, but I don't think any qualification is ever 100% relevant to the job. I did my HR and CIPD, and some of it I've never used since I've left college and university. You know what I mean? But you had to do it because it was part of that qualification. So I haven't done anything with the colleges. What I had to do is leave that to the hiring managers and let them get into the detail of what will be learnt. Because I call that the technical side of the job.
Yeah, of course. No. Yeah. And I think it is using, I mean, what really actually stood out to me, I went to a conference actually last week, and they were talking about technology and launching technology in the manufacturing sector, etc. From that point of view, and how do you make it land? How do you make it last? How do you make it, how do you make people adopt it? And I think what's, really just stood out to me there is that it sounds like you had some strong influences initially who were on board and behind the apprenticeship scheme. Because I think if it's one person and they're not, embedding it and it's not being followed up and it's not got that involvement, and I think that ties in really nicely with your mentors and your managers, you seem to have a lot of influential people involved to ensure the success of it, which, why wouldn't you? But a lot of businesses miss that trick from that, really. How easy was it to get that influencers group together initially, or was that a task in itself?
As I say, the ops director set me the challenge of find these apprentices in the next couple of months because we need them, and then my HR director was on board, and the ops director of the other part of the business, so they were also looking for engineering at the time. So from the top, I suppose it's not struggles the wrong word. It's the ones that are then in the production areas that are busy doing the production to try and encourage them to have time. So like one of my sites was like, we have no capacity to take on any engineering apprentices. And I'm like, but if we don't do it now, you're already struggling to recruit. So it's a bit of a warm up. Do you know what I mean? And trying to explain why it's short-term pain for longer-term gain and sort of like getting them on board. And I suppose mothering them, have you got the development plan? Have you done it? How can I help you? Here's an example of one. And just persistently pursuing what I needed from them for the apprentice to have, and explaining the reason why we needed like a clear development plan. Like they come back and go, oh, they just have to go to college, and I'm like, really? That's all they have to do that's for us to give them a pay increase? Is that what we all have to do,
Yeah.
Sort of like just
is it that easy? Maybe I should pull that one out, one extra phrase.
Someone said, oh, they only have to have 90% attendance, and I'm like, really? Is that what we're telling the rest of the business?
Yeah. An interesting one, actually, and we use it here at Pioneer when we take on raw people and sort of, train them up. But, we have our own academy as such that we've sort of, created. But we have mentors and we have managers, but also we have like a buddy scheme. And I know sometimes it can be, well, there's too many people, but we utilise the buddy scheme as just to go to more day to day, as in, emotional, just how you're finding the job, little gripes, and it can be as simple as, oh God, can't find a parking space, that type of approach. Do you have anything in place sort of for the emotional support and because it is, having that person just let off a bit of steam to, really, which is your mentor,
HR.
but sometimes that's you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As I said, we're still learning from this, and one of the things that came up when you were talking earlier that we could do, like we've brought all the apprentices together and they're going to meet quarterly. We just off the top of my head, we probably could bring the managers together, the mentors together. There's more we could do. The buddy, because I think so. If I think about the engineer at Disley, her buddy would be her mentor. She works with the same person all the time. But what we then had to think about is she learning only one way? So we've gone out and said, right, if contractors are coming in, can she learn from them as well? So, but her mentor has probably become her buddy. And then we have to look at like who's the expertise.
Yeah, how we've done it, because we've sort of split our business out. So we've got different divisions. So what one team does is different to the other. But we've made a rule that the buddy has to be outside of your team and your division. Yeah. We're all in one, building. But just for that purpose, that it's not actually about the job. It's not about the task. It is just about having someone there. Yeah, and again, it helps you bed into the culture, helps you just buy into the organisation, and they get to take them out for a free lunch, so they love that. That's how we managed to get them to do it. But I think it's having those little incentives to sort of get people on board, which is always, I suppose, very useful.
My site admins would also be utilised as the buddy. So if they've got an issue, I don't have any uniform, or this has run out, or I've got this problem in the locker, or I can't get into work because the trains aren't working. Do you know what I mean? So we have it, but it's just not formal. But it's something.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I suppose what's the right word? Baby steps to get a manager and a mentor was the first tab. So obviously we can grow from this, and I'm hopeful that they will buddy each other in the cohort of apprentices. So if we let them meet often, that was my when my vision. When I was talking to my colleague about, let's do more with them, let's do a company-wide induction, and let's meet quarterly. And at the end of that, they'll do a project, because they across sites and stuff. And I did say to them, if I was you, those that are doing engineering or those that are paper makers, I'd be getting each other's numbers and setting up a little group. But again, I'm not forcing. Yeah. I'm not forcing that stuff. But yeah.
So, what would you say were the 3 standouts of what's worked well about your apprenticeship scheme? If you were passing on the knowledge to someone else, what are the 3 standouts to you that have worked well?
For me, having a clear development plan. Like, so we know as a business what we're expecting them to do, what we expect them to have learned in year 1, 2, 3, and 4, or however long it is, so that you can keep cross-referencing. Did they learn? Something will fly in that the business, won't be working on that particular make of paper on that month when we've said they were, so we'll have to change it. But it's just a focus, isn't it, to go, right, if we want a fully fledged engineer in 4 years' time, what do we need them to have done each year to then become fully fledged, or a paper maker? So having a clear plan, but making sure they know about it and the manager is owning it with the mentor, and it's talked about, so it's transparent and clear, because that was a learning. Someone had a plan, but it wasn't really followed or communicated. I loved the induction, the 2-week induction across the business. And as I say, the feedback, apart from a few whinges about what time they had to get up to travel to the furthest away site, they all got free lunches, and they met some great people and got some great stories. But I think that helped them understand the whole business and not just their site, and then open their eyes to possibilities, life outside their site. And I think guaranteeing a job at the end of the apprenticeship is a standout too, that hopefully people see that we're not there to abuse the apprenticeship levy or the apprenticeship scheme and just keep churning people. We're there to grow talent and nurture.
And what would you say the 2 things that have maybe not worked as well that you feel that you could improve, or have improved, or would improve to make it more effective?
The challenge is the industry and how we attract people to the paper making manufacturing. So it's the work on the employer branding that we've got in the background in terms of getting more people to know who we are. So like the building links with the school. So there's more I can do in terms of we had more engineer applicants than we had for the operations production side. Yeah. But as you know, because you work in the engineering, like you said, you went to your daughter's school. The world is doing a lot to attract people to engineering, not particularly so to manufacturing type production.
Yeah. One tip, a really quick win, is work experience. So, you know,
it's the age, though, isn't it? It's the
as in, even if it's a work experience, they have careers days where they go out and they do something. But what a lot of several of my clients do is they'll do a half day, come for a tour. I mean, as long as they're supervised, could they come for a tour?
Yeah, which is what I was saying. Viv, who I went to watch, that's what she does. So that's the challenge for me of the employer branding bit, is finding more time to link with more skills and say all of this stuff. You know, what do you do? How can we get your young people in to have a look, to think about this type of career? So yeah, that's still to be done.
The project to do. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of the impact that it's had then, you obviously mentioned about the apprentices having a well-rounded education, having the hands-on experience. How do you ensure that they're that finished article as much as they can be by the end? What have you done to sort of try and ensure
that's where the manager and mentor should be closely aligned and having regular reviews. And so this year, which was an error from last year, I've got better in a process for managers to fill in forms, give me back, let me read, let's all be reading how we're getting on against the plan. But if a manager's not getting an apprenticeship to the right place in 4 years and we're guaranteeing them a job, then that, for me, that's on the manager to make sure that they're getting the skills that are needed to give the person a job. So there is a level of responsibility that we all need to take on. So HR helps to get them in. We help with the procedure. We help with the induction. We help you with the processes. But the manager and mentor, then for me, are responsible for training and developing that person, having the links with college, what they're learning in college. Is that relevant? How do we apply that to the job? What do we want them to be able to do after year 1, year 2, so that at the end of it, everyone's took responsibility, including the apprentice.
Yeah.
For being a fully fledged engineer or paper maker at the end.
Sounds like you've got a really good spread of accountability, which is great because it doesn't land on one person. I mean, I'm sure you're picking up and doing a lot of the checking in to make sure, but I think that's always good. And what feedback have you received so far from the apprentices who have gone through the apprenticeship there? What feedback have you had so far from them?
So I've only got one in my mills who's just finished, and unfortunately for him, he's gone through it during the pandemic. So the feedback from him was, obviously he's got a job at the end and he's liking being here and he's been well developed and well trained. There were some struggles with the college and the work. There's one who's in year 3 and his manager at the time worked really closely with him because he was having problems with the training provider. So we've got involved with the training. We've not just left them and said, right, this isn't acceptable, this is not suitable. We've changed the training provider for the ones coming in because we've learned from them, but we're supporting Caleb to make sure, like he's behind in his learning, but that's not his fault. It's the college haven't sent assessors out. So, and we're mindful of that. So we're working with people, and I think it's that two-way communication. So we need the apprentice to be telling the manager and mentor stuff as much as them communicating. So the paper making one with I'm really close to the college. I've now got one of the managers going, they've not been in touch with me about this year's apprenticeship. They should have been by now. What we're doing about it?
Yeah.
And so it's like people are taking up the responsibility and understanding their roles more as we go through time. But as I say, from the induction event, I did a little questionnaire and they were like, oh, wow, can't believe I've learned so much about the whole business, that this is great. And we've met each other, and, I'm checking in with them. I'm chasing up their managers. So I know they're having the one-to-ones, and whenever I'm on my sites, I'll be, if I see them, how are you getting on?
Great. So looking forward then, how do you see the programme evolving in the future?
So I just spoke to the HR. We've had a HR meeting today, and I know because of the success of what myself and my colleague Avina have done with the induction and the feedback, it's like, we can get in. Can we have a HR apprentice? Can we have a marketing apprentice? So I've just checked in with her today. And I know paper making and engineering will be in the budget, and I've just said to her today, where are we at with? Because she's like, I'd like to triple it, and me and Gavina are like, oh my god, I thought, That's a lot of work. But I do believe as a business we are looking at the possibility of also widening it out to other functions. But definitely continuing with the paper making and the engineering.
Okay. And what advice would you have for any other sort of manufacturing businesses looking to, introduce an engineering apprenticeship? What would be your 2 bits of advice that you would give to them? If they, for example, have a thought process that there's a skills shortage and they need an apprenticeship scheme in place, what would be your advice?
I think it's have the clear plan of what you want them to learn during the apprenticeship, so you've got something at the end of it and the person's got something because they've learned a particular skill. But on the other side of that is make sure you've got people in the business that can support them to do that. So the manager, the mentor, the buddy, that you're not just leaving them to themselves and expecting them to learn everything and then wondering at the end of 3 or 4 years, why don't they know anything? But I think that is the big commitment, that the support that the person needs to learn, because they won't be fully fledged, they won't hit the ground running. One of our engineering apprentices has just left teaching. He's in his 30s and he's decided to have a change of career.
Yeah.
Teaching is nothing like engineering. So luckily he put himself through a little part-time MBQ, so he's got a bit of educational knowledge. Yeah. But we can't just leave him being, though you're in your 30s. You've worked for X amount of years.
Yeah. And it's another, I was speaking to a client the other day, and we were actually talking about exactly this, that apprenticeships do get associated with school leavers. Yeah. But funny enough, we had a guy who worked for us who studied engineering at college. He then came to work for us in engineering recruitment, and he just loved the engineering side. He was like, I'm going to go and do an apprenticeship. So he joined Hovis, and then he went from, studying it to recruitment to, going and studying it. So I think, we it's another whole conversation point, but we do miss this pool of people that maybe mid to late 20s, that, early 30s, that maybe thought they had their career path, but they haven't. And, a lot of them, for example, can be teachers, quite knowledgeable people to sort of transfer over.
I think the advantage for us being a real living wage employer and starting it, I know it's not a massive amount of money, but £12 is double this, or just a bit less than the £6 something as an apprenticeship. So trying to change your career, if that guy who was a teacher had to then drop to £6 odd, he's less likely to want to do that over 4 years unless he's already saved really hard. And we also had an operator on shifts in Lancaster who we always advertise it internally as well, because we want, to be recommended. So he went from a shift-based operator job to a days-based engineer. So his money dropped slightly because he got a shift premium, but he's like, I would not have got into engineering.
Yeah.
Otherwise, so he sees the benefit of going on to days and dropping and learning a new skill, because in 4 years' time, when he's an engineer, he'll be on more money than staying as a production operator because of the difference in the skill level required. So we've got a couple of people. It's not all been young, but like you say, people assume that it's always young school leavers, but we've got a real good mix, and I think attracting people at different levels. Yeah.
Yeah. So final thoughts, is there anything you want to share? Obviously, I've got a lot of connections, etc. A lot of, apprentices or people wanting to get into that. Is there anything you'd like to sort of share about Northwood or your apprenticeship scheme? Anything that you'd like to?
Hopefully I've done that throughout in terms of sort of like saying, we raise the bar and we pay more. We give the contract and a guarantee, an apprenticeship agreement and a contract guarantee of a job. We encourage the managers to have development plans that are really clear and have conversations. And I've really labored the point with this year's intake to say, this is your development plan. You need to also own it. It's not just a manager's thing. You need to be saying, how are you developing me? How am I getting on? What am I doing? I'll have a catch up with them in a month or two's time, and we'll go our quarterly event to see what responsibility they're taking. But it's not the easiest things to do, but I think it's worth it. I think putting in some time and effort to grow your own talent is,
and so rewarding. So rewarding at the end as well, right? So someone goes from that journey from day one to then, being that finished article. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're a very busy lady who's just come back from the Caribbean. I'm probably the last person on your list, but I really, really appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much.